dancing. So he called to one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf. He has come back safe and sound." The older son became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never even gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him?" My son," the father said, "you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours who was dead is alive again. He was lost and is found." This is a reading from Luke 15:25, verse 32.
So there's a context for the passage that Steve just read. Jesus is speaking with religious leaders, teachers of the law, and they see him associating with people that were crooks, prostitutes, people they regarded as quote-unquote sinners. And essentially they asked Jesus, like, why are you hanging out with these lost people? These spiritually lost people. Why are you associating with them? Why? And in response, Jesus tells three parables. All of them are parables about lostness. In Luke 15, the first parable is the parable of the lost sheep. And then there's a parable of a lost coin. And then this one, the one that we've been looking at together for some weeks now, the parable of the lost son. And throughout Luke chapter 15, Jesus is trying to communicate a new and improved idea of lostness. A new and improved idea of what it means to be spiritually lost. And here at the climax of the three stories on lostness, we have this shocking, category-busting message from Jesus about what it means to be spiritually lost. And I say category-busting because what Jesus says here would have completely astonished his original listeners, the audience that was gathered to hear him. And so here's how I want to use our time together today. First, I want to present this new category of lostness to you. And then second, I want to present some of the signs of this new lostness so that we can discover just individually whether we're in that category or out. And then third, we're going to look at who needs to hear this message. Like, really. And then lastly, I want to point out some of the implications of what this means for River City Church and how we do life together in this family of God. So first, what is this new category of lostness that Jesus is trying to communicate? Well, most people who pick up the Bible and read or study Luke 15, they focus almost entirely on the prodigal. They focus on the younger son, the one who had taken the money and left, and who comes home and he repents and he gets forgiveness. They focus on the forgiveness of the father a little bit, but it's really the younger son who gets all the attention, mostly. And it's easy to see that the younger son is lost. We see him shaming the father. We see him destroying the unity of their family. We see him squandering resources. And as the older brother says, we see him or hear of him sleeping with prostitutes. And so we can easily say, yeah, there is somebody who's lost. That's definitely a lost person. But if you have a Bible with you, you can notice that the parable doesn't end there. In fact, the entire reading that Steve just did focuses on the older brother. Focuses on another person in the parable. And when we look at the actions and the attitudes of this older brother in the parable, we can discover that he's not so dissimilar to the younger one. In fact, that there are a lot of overlaps. The older son would have known, for instance, that the day that the prodigal returned was the happiest day in his father's life. The older son would have known that his father would be completely overjoyed. In fact, he knew as much because when he hears the merrymaking and the music, he calls one of the servants over. He says, like, what's going on at the house? And they say, your brother who was lost, he's home again. So he knew there was a reason for the celebration, and yet he refused to go in. The older son refused to go into the largest party that his father had ever thrown, which was, in that culture, an astonishing act of disrespect and disobedience. Essentially, the older son, the elder brother, is saying to the father, I'm not going to honor your headship. I'm not going to associate with this family. And so the older son in the parable doesn't care, does he? He doesn't care that his kid brother has come home. He doesn't care that his father is overjoyed. He doesn't care that he's just shamed his father in not coming in. What is the elder brother concerned about? Well, we can look here and we can see. It says he responds most angrily to the fact that the father has killed the fattened calf. He's concerned with the father's things instead of with the father himself. He's angry that the father has gone and killed the fattened calf. Now, in that culture, people didn't eat meat regularly the way that we do. In fact, a family was lucky. It was a sign of wealth to be able to eat meat at least once a week. But here the father has thrown a feast wherein he's serving not just meat, but he's serving the costliest meat available. I mean, he's serving veal. And that's what has the elder brother upset. He's like, are you kidding me? You've never even given me a young goat that I could celebrate with my friends, and here this rebel comes home and you kill the fattened calf for him? I mean, that's just outrageous. And so the older son is concerned about the father's things. He's not concerned about the heart of his father, which is just overjoyed that his brother has come home. And typically, a Middle Eastern patriarch would have been outraged. There would have been a punishment for the older son at his defiance for not coming in, for not submitting to the father. But instead, the father here goes out to plead with him. The father is begging his belligerent son to come into the feast, to be part of the celebration. My son, says the father. And the original Greek is actually not son, it's the word teknon, which is the word for child. And so instead of admonish his son for not coming into the feast, for standing up against his authority, the father is addressing him in the tenderest words imaginable. My child, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. Come to the celebration. And so what's interesting, those of you who have been coming through the series, you know that just as the father had gone out, run out to the younger son when he came home, now the father has gone out to the older son who refuses to come home. Interesting turn of events. Do you realize what Jesus is saying through this? Jesus is telling us that the older son, the elder brother, is just as lost as the younger son. There's no difference. We see through what I've been sharing that both sons are alienated from the father. Both sons had assaulted the integrity, the unity of the family. Both sons were more concerned with the father's things than they are with the father himself. They want the father's stuff. That's their primary concern. The difference is that one goes about getting the father's stuff differently than the other. One basically says, give it to me, and then, take the money and run, right? Stevie Miller? The other one tries to get the stuff by staying home. The one tries to get the stuff by controlling the situation at the home. The other one tries to get the stuff by breaking all the rules. But there's really not much dissimilar. They're both more into the stuff. But here's what's most surprising of all. By the end of the story, the younger son humbles himself, repents, and is saved. And the older son, the obedient son, the responsible son, the rule-keeping son, remains lost. But how can you say that? People have argued that point with me. They say, well, you don't know that he remains lost. I mean, the parable just kind of ends here, doesn't it? Maybe later on he comes to his senses and he repents and he ends up saved as well. And then I remind them that there is no later on. Right? This is a fictional story. These characters don't exist in real life beyond the story. And Jesus, who tells the story, ends it with the bad son being saved and the good son being lost.